Welcome to La Chaîne Géopolitique. We will comment today the latest development in Afghanistan with comments coming from earlier this morning from President Biden, who said that the deadline of 31st of August will be delayed if necessary in order to evacuate all foreigners and all Afghan who would like to leave the country, because he said very realistically that it could not be done, all those evacuation, by 31st of August, which will be just on within 8 days. So, but after his comment, the spokesman of the Taliban movement said that this delay will bear, I quote, consequences. It remains to be seen whether Taliban will implement those consequences, because it's not yet clear what are the threats behind those statements from the Taliban spokesman. Does it mean that Taliban are ready to fight against American, which is a realistic scenario, because due to the fact that Americans are in a very, let's say, difficult situation from a military point of view. They are only present in the Kabul airport, so it means that the Taliban fighters could just simply fight on inside the Kabul airport to push them to leave the country. So that it's a realistic scenario that we could see beyond 31st of August, let's say, fighting between Taliban fighters and American and other foreigner soldiers. So that's why we heard later on within the day much more, let's say, pragmatic statement coming from the Pentagon department. The Pentagon spokesman, Mr. Kirby, said that that the American army will complete its withdrawal by 31st of August, and we heard the same statement from the National Security Advisor of President Biden, Mr. O'Sullivan, which confirmed also that the American troops will leave Afghanistan by 31st of August. So clearly, we see that Pentagon, the National Security Advisor, and President Biden are not on the same line whether the American troops should leave on 31st of August. Clearly, there is kind of a kind of discrepancy about the vision of how long should the American army should stay. Clearly, I think that Mr. Biden is clearly the intention of Mr. Biden is clearly based on human and let's say emotive reason. But from a Pentagon and the National Security Advisor perspective, clearly they try to adopt a very pragmatic stance due to the fact that there is a fear that fighting could erupt with Taliban fighters, and it means that the withdrawal will be at this moment, if there is some fighting, will be at risk. The withdrawal will be at risk due to the fact that we could not implement, let's say, withdrawal in the best condition. So probably the withdrawal could be at risk if there is any fighting that erupts, and that's why probably the stance of Pentagon and also for State Department is to leave as quickly as possible the country, at the expense, we have to underline, at the expense of leaving some Afghan work with foreign troops in Afghanistan. And that's clearly, I think there is clearly now among the United US officials a clear, let's say, a gap between those who are ready to take some risk, to bring all those necessary people who help foreign troops to outside of Afghanistan, and some people like among the US Army who said that we don't have the means, let's say, to stay beyond the 31st of August, and we cannot endanger the withdrawal, and we have to leave now the country, despite that it implies leaving some Afghan in Afghanistan. So clearly we will see whether the opinion of Mr. Biden will prevail, or let's say the stance of the State Department and the Pentagon Department. So it remains to be seen over the next days whether the withdrawal will be completed by 31st of August. My opinion is personally, it will be completed because I think Mr. Biden, also, even though he had some feelings for some people, I think let's say the withdrawal is much more important to his mind than, let's say, bringing all Afghan. I think now it looks for many U.S. officials unrealistic to bring all those people within this time frame, and perhaps they will try, probably, I guess, to negotiate with Taliban to that those people remain on the Afghan territory on safe conditions. So I think that's exactly what could happen. So instead of letting in on the Afghan soil American soldiers, I think American will actually enter into negotiation with Taliban, which is actually the case. We were very astonished during the press briefing from Mr. Kirby and from Mr. O'Sullivan, the once again, the National Security Advisor, President Biden, who acknowledges that there is daily talks with Taliban, because simply due to the fact that we don't know exactly where Taliban fighters should lie at the airport, where exactly. So they discussed on daily basis exactly to know what are the position of the Taliban fighters next to the Kabul airport, because you have to understand that in order to avoid any clashes, there is a kind of buffer zone at the Kabul airport between foreign troops and the Taliban fighters and Taliban newly the new ruler of Afghanistan. So clearly, it remains to be seen whether the American troops will remain beyond 31st of August. I have some doubts about it, and whether, if it's the case, whether it will bear some consequences. Whether are Taliban ready to, let's say, to fight against American troops. It remains to be seen, but at the time we are speaking, Taliban have announced tonight that they are ready to fight against the last, let's say, place in Afghanistan which is not under Taliban control, which is the Panjshir Valley. But we have also learned tonight that one of the major, let's say, Mujahideen, which refused to submit to the Taliban rule, which is a son of the legendary Ahmad Shah Massoud. Ahmad Massoud, the son of Ahmad Shah Massoud, said tonight that he's ready for negotiation with Taliban, but at the same time he's ready also to fight whether the Taliban will fight against them.